public benefits organizations, government registered under the NGO Coordination Act, to join us. Let us also utilize it is very easy for the public regulatory authority to simply create a system where there is a dashboard and all the organizations that are already registered under the NGO Coordination Act and are in good standing in terms of reporting to simply just migrate to the Act. Let's take the innovation that we've seen the government develop over the last 2 years with 5,000 government agencies and services online and bring it to this sector. Thirdly, let us also think about how do we essentially create regulatory systems that are also powerful from self-regulation, because I think the other thing that we must not let go of is this idea that the Public Benefits Organizations Act is a regulatory act, but it is also a self-regulation, and that actually it creates the obligation on those of us who lead these institutions to be transparent, to be accountable, and to use the resources in the way that they are, I guess, they were given to us. So allow me to stop there. There's much more that I wanted to say, but I'll have to put it on a next post or Facebook or something like that. Please go to the Amnesty International platforms to read the rest. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yes, it's time as well, and schedule. Please allow me and indulge me on this one. The next speaker is from the International Non-Governmental Organization, that's Ingo Forum. Please ask that we have David Malombe from the Civic Freedoms Forum. May I please ask Dr. Margaret Lubale from the Health NGOs Network and Carol Agengo to please be on standby to just come right on my left here. We have a small holding room, so you can just kindly be up next really quick before we invite our chief guest. Applause to Keith Doyle from Ingo Forum.
Distinguished guests, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's an honor today to be here representing the INGO Forum in Kenya at this important launch of the Harmonized Draft Public Benefit Organizations Regulations. Firstly, let me express appreciation on behalf of the INGO community. This process has been the process leading to today's launch has been inclusive, consultative, and deeply collaborative. I speak confidently for my INGO colleagues in saying we're generally pleased that the inputs from our community have been considered and incorporated. This inclusive approach speaks volumes about the commitment to partnership demonstrated by the PBORA and the Ministry of Interior and National Administration. Looking forward to the public participation phase, I know some of us INGO members have already committed support to facilitate the upcoming public participation, and I'm hopeful and indeed expectant that after today's event we'll see even more expressions of interest and support for this very important process. INGOs have a clear responsibility to actively contribute to public engagement process like this, and from what I have witnessed so far, reassures me that the commitment from our sector is both genuine and it's widespread. As we embark on the next critical stage of public participation, we encourage continued genuine engagement across the entire spectrum of Kenyan society. With approximately 1 year to get this all done, let's collectively ensure that we get it right. To truly succeed, this process must reflect the diverse perspectives of Kenyan public, recognizing that the true strength and legitimacy of these regulations rest firmly in their hands. On a lighter note, given my own Irish background, I cannot resist referencing a well-known Irish proverb, Ní neirt go céir le chéile. Anybody? No? Okay. There is no strength without unity. Having the privilege of working across 4 continents over the last 20 years, I can assure you that this proverb holds truly universally. Unity in purpose and participation will indeed be our greatest asset in achieving robust and inclusive PBO regulations. In closing, I reaffirm, together we can ensure these regulations empower and enhance meaningful contributions of PBOs across Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith Doyle. Up next, the chairperson of the Civic Freedoms Forum, David Malombe. A round of applause as he comes on.
Good morning, colleagues. To the chief guest, allow me to be. As I proceed, I also want to request TFF to just waive of the PBO bill for those many years, to just waive, because we are so many meetings we used to have very early in the morning, so many actors from the health sector, from the human rights movement, all the sectors. So I think this is one of the processes which has really brought us together over time. So allow me to speak about a few things. First, to explain which led to the adoption of the Act in December 2012, and then the commencement from January, but of course, and the NGO board, which did not proceed very well in 2013. So, in 2014, we met again as a sector, and we did a legal audit to look at the areas of convergence and divergence. And we discovered there was 80% convergence between the two parallel regulations. There was 20% divergence, but out of 20%, 10 were minor issues, and now 10% were major issues, which the sector was a bit unhappy with. So following the commencement last year, we came up also with a legal working group, which also sat down and also did a very thorough audit. We developed a framework of analysis, also building on our 2013 and also 2014 process. So this framework of analysis, which is legal by nature, was also doing a comparative analysis based on the provisions of the Act. Actually, if you look at the Act in Section 3A, it's very clear about the obligations of the PB authority. We also looked at the international legal obligations, but also the Constitution of Kenya, especially the right to fair administrative action and also the right to freedom of association. Out of that, we also did further analysis and also developed a framework for public engagement where we mapped and came up with 13 regions for engagement. So that is the kind of framework which we are going to be using to do the further audit of the harmonized regulations. So we are talking about harmonization because we have come out of that process of parallelism. Apart from the harmonization of the two regulations, our legal working group also discovered there's two sets of regulations, one Marksman and the chief guest, are also outdated. So there are so many areas which also require further updating. So here, we are not talking about just consolidation, but also updating and reviewing the two sets further so that they are in line with the current challenges we are facing as a country. So therefore, we expect three things out of around the pending issues, from where we sit. The bare minimum could be like 90% area with the other emerging issues, which are not captured in the two sets of regulations, which will be but also coming with a framework which also helps us deal with the current challenges and also opportunities in the country. So as a CFF, we have a plan whereby next week we are going to convene now to do the assessment of the revised regulations against these frameworks and also these documents I've talked about. We are going to support the community engagement forums so that our partners also get involved. We mobilize them. We'll also support them to be part of the regional convenings, but we'll also be preparing shadow reports to ensure that also what is discussed during those community engagements are also very well captured, so that now when it comes to the national conference and other processes, we are also properly involved. So, Bwana CEO, we are going to be supporting, we are going to be engaging, we are going to be monitoring all the conversations at the local. We we are going to be doing very serious legal audit. So we have set up committees which are going to be supporting on different issues, Joshua Chagoni, communication and documentation led by Winnie Masai, among others. So that is the process we are talking about. All of us have invested in so much, but from our side, we have already a threshold, and then we are very easy to engage with the process and also support it accordingly. So as we talk about the regulations, I think there are also other authority is almost sorted out, although there are also legal cases, which of course as a sector and yourself, we have to find ways of dealing with. But also the question of the transition from the former NGO Council to the Federation, I think that is too a big challenge. And I think from where I sit and from all the stakeholders who are in the program, I think we commit to create a framework and a process which will enable us to get the Federation which is envisaged in the Act. So, Comrade Choboy, you know we have come a long way. And Irungu said very well in one of the last meetings we had with the PB Authority, Yakwamba, we are big organizations, but none of us has the capacity to be the transitioning organization. So I think within the next 6 months, Irungu and others, let's find a way of consolidating this process of transition to the Federation, because it's our duty, not the duty of the PBO Authority. Of course, CEO and the Chair, there's a whole process under Part 2 in the Act which talks about the Joint Working Committee of 15 organizations. So we have been discussing this, also a process of getting into that, and then you find ways of fast-tracking that, and then finally, there are so many other benefits which have been used to enable us also join the new regime, as opposed to what Joshua was talking about. Some of those benefits are going to be accruing. Some of them actually don't require regulations. So with those few remarks, I just wonder side of government and also side of civil society, because this has been our baby. We have really fought for it. Of the regulations, then we'll have one of the best progressive frameworks. We have told the CEO, if we develop the best framework, the PB Authority will be like one of the most progressive actors in the country. And we have said regulation is also very, for example, the Kenya Revenue Authority. And we commit to support all the processes up to the...
Good morning, distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to write on the protocols already by giving my warmest congratulations to the Public Benefit Authority, Organizations Regulatory Authority 13. Indeed, this is a big day for PIBORA and for all Kenya's civil society. Have been waiting for the regulations to be harmonized and for them to come into effect so that our guest, allow me to acknowledge Dr. Kipto for his dedication and energy and willingness to work with us, the CSO community, to ensure that these regulations were harmonized and to acknowledge that he has demonstrated that PIBORA has a renewed sense of direction NGO sector or CSO sector in Kenya. HENET acknowledges that a vibrant, well-regulated and accountable civil society space is important for development. And so on behalf of HENET, therefore, we pledge our full commitment in working with PIBORA and with our CSO partners to make the PBO Act and the regulations better known. Level. I just want to say that we as HENET, representing the health NGOs, number one, we began to see the dwindling and we began to look for opportunities to be able to look inward for domestic mobilization and utilization of funding, but also looking at ways in which government can look at the matter of social contracting, which means funding. So we came in with that expectation, and we are here to stay because we have found that in these regulations, in the Act, there is a provision, and we have begun to use it to begin to develop a social contracting policy that will be able to be used. It is still at its nascent stages, and so I can't talk much about it. But one of the things that we are looking forward to having is a social contracting policy that has been made. We also want to say that, yes, indeed, it is a landmark law, and one of the most transformative elements of the fiscal space that is dwindling in this country, and to see how we can bring the experience that CSOs have to bear in terms of service. I want to also say that the regulations create opportunities for us to implement public programs and to scale innovation, especially in underfunded areas like primary health care, nutrition, mental health, and gender equity. Finally, as we launch this, as we celebrate this launch, I just want to say that when Irungu was asking how many people were there in 1990-something, when he was in his 30s, I was there. And when he was in his 20s, when he was looking for the library in the University of Nairobi, I met him then 10 years later, and he trained me actually in gender, in Femnet, when you were working with Femnet. And so when he went to the NGO Council, I followed because I knew his brand and I believed in the brand. So I was there, very pregnant, working at the NGO Council, being a participant, following through to ensure that the rights of our civil space was not infringed upon. And so it gives me a lot of pleasure to be here today. I don't know how old we are, Irungu, but we are alive. We are above 35. And there's a meme that says, if your father had this radio, vaa sweta, meza vitamins, enda ulale mapema. I want to say, to update that meme and say, if you were there in 1991, vaa sweta, meza vitamin, lala mapema, kuna mafua inashika wazee. But that's on a light note. And so finally, I want to once again applaud the efforts of the regulatory authority to transform Kenya's NGO sector into a more inclusive, enabling, and accountable space for impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Margaret. I'm informed that, in fact, Irongo is 25 plus VAT, fuliza na ya kutoa. Indeed, kidole kimoja hakiui chawa. I want to recognize the others who are here. It takes very many to have brought us to this space. The Sustainable Development Goals Kenya Forum, the Financial Action Task Force, non-profit organizations working group, the Conference of Kenya, and many other civil society represented here who I will be greeting a little bit later too. Just a real thank you greeting for the work that you've done. Up next, allow me to invite onto the stage the UN Civil Society Conference Summit of the Future co-chair, Carol Agengo. A round of applause, please.
Thank you, Renee. The Honorable Chief Guest, allow me to stand on existing protocol and to start on an issue of age. I work at HelpAge, and repeat after me, aging is cool. That's why everybody's doing it. And all the young people in the room, you are all older people in waiting, so Irongo, take heart. But as I start on to congratulate Dr. Laxmana Kipto for a good job well done. And as we stand on this day to mark this important milestone in a long journey that has been articulated by those who stood before me, I think it is worth celebrating. It has not been an easy journey, but we are at a place where we can look back and move forward. We will recall that the PBO Act Objective 1 seeks to facilitate the organization of PBOs by creating a conducive environment in which PBOs can thrive and carry their affairs without interference. Allow me to focus on the public benefit in the PBO and to focus on the 2PB. These regulations are not applicable in a vacuum, and so what is it that we can do as civil society to level up our engagement so that the public benefit becomes a reality? We will also recall that the conference which I co-chaired last year and which brought the PBO Act into operation came to the Global South for the very first time, and we had the honor of having the president at that conference. Coming to the Global South for the first time was a milestone. It had been held for 68 years. This was the 69th session. And so it was also in support of the Summit of the Future. It recognized the diversity of civil society. We are as diverse as the stars in the sky, and we said we must increase our inclusivity, create greater impact through innovation, collaborate across intersectional issues while lifting intergenerational action. But it also recognized the role of CSOs in advancing development. The PB that I'm talking about is underpinned on development. Otherwise, if we were not interested in development, neither the government nor the civil society would be engaged in the efforts that it is engaged in. And so the role of CSOs in advancing development agenda is well established both nationally and globally. Our work is interconnected and is grounded on the Universal Declaration on Human Rights that speaks on the indivisibility, interrelatedness, interdependence, and a word that I struggle to pronounce, inalienability. I don't think my lecturers agree with me. But we'll recall that the pact is driving development currently, the pact for the future that was the reason for the CSO conference last year. So, and that pact was meant to turbocharge the SDGs. It is therefore important that civil society is ready to step into the space of development and as a critical cog in the wheel, and which is recognized by the UN and member states, we must continue to play this key role in the space that has been offered by the PBO Act, in which the regulations seek to facilitate. So the pact has 56 actions. I invite you to look at it because there's space for everybody and some. So what then must we do as civil society? I want to propose 5 things that begin with the letter C. If you remember nothing else, my name is Carol. The 5 things begin with C. We must collaborate, consolidate, and create impact at all levels. And this will result in movements. If you have a movement, you remember Gen Z movement created, it shook us. Movements shake. Civil society, we have numbers, and we can collaborate, consolidate, and create impact. Those are the first 3 C's. The second one is that we must connect the dots. Renee said it, that kidole kimoja haiwi chawa, sindio? So how do we connect so that we build greater impact? I think we must break the silos. Dr. Lubale spoke about the shrinking fiscal space. That is a reality that we have to face up to, and it's not going to happen if we continue going it alone. So how do we connect the dots? The third one is we must continuously converge and take stock and course correct. There are certain things that have been mentioned that are weak. We cannot test this act unless we put it into effect. So the regulations give us an opportunity to test the act, but we must come together, converge again, so that we test whether it's effective, and then we course correct. So I'm going to stop there and say that it is only when we do these things of collaboration that we build the necessary resilience to withstand the global shocks. Very, very quickly, the collaboration has to be between civil society, government, private sector, think tanks, philanthropies, research organizations coming together. At the conference last year, we launched what we call the Impact Coalitions, and what these are continuing to do is to bring all these. At HelpAge, we have a history of working with the Ministry of Protection and Mr. Chief Guest, we've been working with your brother PS, the Honorable Motari, in activating the issues of Pesa Wazee. At HelpAge, we can't do it alone. The government has the infrastructure, we have the technical know-how, and so we bring this together. So let us work together. I leave us with the 5 C's. Let us collaborate, consolidate, create impact, connect the dots, and continuously converge so that we create the movement for change that we so desire. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Margaret. Madam Carol, thank you so much. Let's please give a round of applause as well to the UN Civil Society Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker will be the final one before I invite the DG to take over with the protocols that will be established. But at this point, please allow me to really appreciate the various government agencies present. I see my friend Philip here from the Private Securities Association regulatory body as well. But apart from that, we have the KWS, we have Judiciary, we have PSRA, we have NACADA, we have Coast Guard, we have representation from the AG's office. We also have representation from Madam Nelly Wanjira, Office of the Attorney General. If you're here, please, thank you so much. Philip Okello, Director General, Private Securities Regulatory Authority. Thank you for being here. Anna Mbugo, Kenya Coast Guard Services. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, NK Robo, that's from the Ministry of Interior and National Administration. We really want to appreciate you. And last but not least, the DCI is also present, and IPOA also here. So please give yourselves a round of applause. The various government agencies that are present here today, much appreciated. At this point in time, did I mention ISPAC? I saw Elvis ISPAC is here. Thank you so much, ISPAC. Thank you so much for being here as well. At this point in time, we've heard from the stakeholders, from the civil society groups, and if you're not part of those who spoke, and maybe just recognize those from the Financial Action Task Force, and also from the non-profit organizations working group, and all civil society organizations present. Please give yourselves a round of applause. Great representation, and we really want to appreciate you. So Mohammed Jaffa, Project Manager, UNDP Amkeni wa Kenya Project, will be our final speaker, after which we'll invite the DG to take over. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Cliff. Our chief guest allowed me to also adopt the protocols that was laid out earlier, and also adopt the speeches that have been also. So, colleagues, I'm privileged to join here today, together with my colleague, Gadoni Jenga. You can just share with. UNDP has been privileged to join this space. We've been here for quite a number of years, privileged to see how much we've transformed that particular sector together. Imesemekana kidole kimoja kivunji chawa, but we will talk about kidole kimoja hakichukui mchele. Tunatoka upande wa chawa kidogo. Right? So colleagues, allow me also to appreciate all of you for joining us as we commemorate this particular milestone. And UNDP, through the Amkeni wa Kenya facility, which I'm privileged to manage, the capacity of a project manager, has walked this journey not only with the sector, but with the authority. Chair, I'm happy to see you. The moment we operationalized the regulation, the act, we all rushed to ask ourselves, what does this mean for the sector? So we ran away with the authority, consulted with the sector as well, but na kidogo kidogo nafanya nini? Inajaza kibaba. So ndo baba ni Irongo Hilton. But colleagues, this journey has started from a very far, enhanced and opened up the space for civil society organizations to speak together and speak at. Gotten to this juncture today, we are praying that inshallah all will put us at the front of quite a lot of the work that we do in this sector. The consultation that the authority has brought in while we are trying to develop these consultations, and my brother Malombe spoke about the harmonized and where that word came from. Because the authority has come together and put together what we have currently as the harmonized draft, which is going out to the public for consultation. Colleagues, we have an African saying that wisdom is like a baobab tree and no one individual can embrace it. Colleagues, let's embrace this baobab tree together for the benefit of the Kenyan people, because we are all ultimately here going to be held responsible when we go in front of wanasema tukienda mbele ya haki. We've been given responsibility. The responsibility that has been placed on us by the Kenyans is a responsibility that is going to be, we are going to be held accountable not only here but also in the hereafter. Colleagues, as UNDP, we continue working not only with the authority but also the sector in achieving the dreams that have been captured in the Act. When I was coming up here, I was told, please make sure you speak under a minute. Colleagues, I'm sure I'm at about 57 seconds. And with those few remarks, colleagues, I wish you all the best, and we are looking forward to continue working together.
Mohammed, and indeed all of the speakers before him. A round of applause for them all, please. It is my unique pleasure to hand over the stage to our DG, Dr. Kipto, to take us through the next part of the program and eventually the launch. Please, a round of applause for our host.
Thank you so much, Renee, together with Cliff. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Our PS, Dr. Raymond Omolo, I had appreciated the group before you came, and we are so much excited today to have you to launch our regulations. When we gave out the invitations to all of you, I received a reply from one of the invited guests who wrote back and said, I'm not coming for the launch because I was not invited to give my input for the regulations. So I had to reply and say, we are launching the draft regulations and then we give you the opportunity to have your input. So kindly come. And I was a little bit apprehensive and I thought maybe all of you will take that perspective and don't turn up. So I'm happy to see all of you from all the forums that we've mentioned by the MCs. We are excited to have all of you. When I came into office, PS, the first thing that some of the CSO visited me, and some of them I can see them looking at me because I am about to divulge what they told me. They were apprehensive whether I was going to implement the act. And given my history from where I came from, some of them actually, they are very inquisitive group, and they had Googled about me, and all of them had my pictures from everywhere I was. And I said, all of us have a past, and then we have a place where we reach and we go ahead and do some other things. And here we are. They are a very good group, and they are joining us, and I'm very happy because they are here and ready to support the process. So, sir, without much ado, and I've told plus the BBOs that we've started living and operationalizing the Act. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, you would write emails to us and NGO Bureau. That was the past. Now, if you write to us, you have to write the name and then it is at bbora.gov. So to make your act, we are already operationalizing the act. And so, part act has to do with the tribunal and to give us a brief of where we are in so as that is concerned is none other than the registrar from the judiciary of Kenya in charge of the tribunals, Madam Anne Asuka. Kindly join me in putting our hands together as we invite her to the stage to give us a brief. Madam Anne Asuka, please.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Dr. Lemod Omoro, Principal Secretary, State Department of Internal Security and National Administration, distinguished ladies and gentlemen from the civil society, all invited guests, good morning. Honorable PS, allow me to ride on the protocols that have been set out. My name is Anna Suga. I'm a registrar in charge of tribunals in the judiciary and receive greetings from the judiciary. I'm here in two capacities. I'm here representing my boss, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Honorable Winfrida Mukaya, who was not able to come due to exigencies of duty. And I'm also here because Dr. Kipto invited me to come to this function as part of the stakeholder in the regulations process. Colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there are 41 tribunals in Kenya and counting. And the newest on the block is the PPODT. And when it came to recruitment, we had to go for what we call capacity building because we didn't know what we were looking for. And there's lingo for NGOs and then there's lingo for judiciary. Capacity building is, I think, training, what we call training in general terms. And we had to take time to understand what the Act required of the people who will come and regulate the disputes or listen to disputes. Article 159 of the Constitution is very clear that judicial authority is derived from the people and it's vested in two institutions, courts and tribunals, very express. And why are all the acts being promulgated in Parliament coming up with tribunals? Every act you go through right now has a certain dispute resolution mechanism. The one that I'm really waiting for operationalization, Honorable PS, is the SHA one. There's a SHA tribunal coming. I can't imagine what it would look like in terms of the disputes that are coming, and operationalizing that one because we are not ready mentally and all that, but it's on the way. And tribunals, based on my experience, the knowledge factor, because even the adverts, we are affordable in terms of court fees. Rarely will you find that you've been turned away because you can't afford to file a matter in a tribunal. The turnaround time, which is the issue of speed, is very short. If you really stay in a tribunal, you're probably talking 6 months, 72 days, 58 days, 60 days. So we are a bit efficient in terms of turnaround times because our rules are very flexible. And so even the rules that we shall come back to you for stakeholder participation to operationalize the tribunal should have that flexibility and those characteristics. And one of the things to note is that tribunals are part-time. They do not employ on a full-time basis. So it's good that people offer themselves. But we noticed that when the advert went out, not a lot of people from the societies actually gave their names forward or applied for that job. It was in the dailies, it was in the websites, and the applicants were not that many, that where you have a deluge of applicants, but this was not the case. So the judiciary carried out the recruitment process of members, competitively so, and one of the curious provisions of the law is that those members of tribunals have to be vetted by Parliament. And we forwarded their names to the National Assembly for approval. And I'm glad to say that Parliament has now published their names, and the vetting is 12th of this month. And you have time and opportunity to look at the names and forward any information that you might have or views of the candidates who are forwarded for vetting. Under the Act, the PBO Act, the tribunal has a lot of jurisdictions, it has a lot of powers, and I don't wish to go into the thematic areas of the disputes it can actually mediate on. But curiously, the Act does not provide for an internal dispute resolution mechanism where you speak amongst yourselves first before you come to the tribunal. And Article 159, which is supreme, is that you must pursue ADR. So before you come to the tribunal accusing the federation, the board, or whoever, could you have a discussion, have some tea, talk about it, see whether you can resolve it, and only invoke the tribunal if that is not possible. So they encourage us first to try mediation, negotiation, before actually presenting the case to the tribunal. And only has failed, then you can come. So it's because the issues of costs, they have powers to award costs if the cases are frivolously brought, and there are issues of summoning expert witnesses or summoning witnesses when they do not appear from both sides. Our commitment as judiciary is to collaborate to ensure that the relationships are maintained and preserved, because Kenya is an adversarial country. It is tukutane wapi? Tukutane kotini. So we do not wish to have that slogan going on. So we probably need to change that slogan to tukutane kwa meza, tukutane kwa mkahawa, or some other place, because kotini is becoming a bit crowded. So we do wish that when we call you for stakeholder engagement on the tribunal rules, that you give us your views, because they're going to be under development. But more importantly is that during induction for new members on their jurisdiction or on their powers, we shall require a lot of support, both from the regulatory authority and from yourselves, in terms of what are the expectations from both sides, and how do you want the matters to be handled, because it's a collaborative effort. And so our commitment is to make sure that any disputes that arise or are brought to us are managed independently, impartially, and with speed. That is our commitment as judiciary. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Anne. Just a little correction. The hearings will be on 13th, Friday, not on 12th. Thank you for that update. Now, some of you will stop sending me those letters to solve your cases, because the tribunal is there. And I need to put a disclaimer that we were not part of that process. It was purely a judiciary affair. Now, I want us also to recognize Doris from KRA, as we all know that also the act as an aspect of tax exemptions, and today KRA is here represented by Doris Inga Isu. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you for that. Some of the BBOs, our chief guests, are members of the Conservation Alliance of Kenya, and there are over 80 BBOs there who fall within their activities and operations fall under KWS. So they work together with KWS, and recently we had a conversation with their CEO, Mr. Steve Itela, and just to join us today and to be with us is none other than the Director General of KWS, Professor Erastus Kanga. And ladies and gentlemen, let us put our hands together as we welcome Professor Kanga, please.
Thank you, Dr. Laksemana. Our chief guest, the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Interior and the National Administration, Dr. Limod Molo. Allow me, chief guest, to write on the protocols already established. And ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, a good morning to you. I am probably here because at the Kenya Wildlife Service, where I serve as the Director General, I deal with more than 500 NGOs, CBOs, and PBOs, because our sector is not only interesting, but it is the foundation for this nation. This nation is natural resource dependent. We don't mine minerals, we don't mine oil, we don't do production. The mama boggers on the ground, the hustlers on the ground, they have to till their ground, they have to go to the rivers, they have to interact with the hunt for them to survive. That is how important our sector is. And I am a proud Director General because last month I prosecuted one Belgian, one Vietnamese, and 2 Kenyans who were stealing your hands. And I was able to attain a conviction. You'll be wondering why hunts and not elephants. It's a long story, but if you're in the sector, you'd actually come to learn that without those hunts, the society that you're serving will not be there. Those hunts are so important. Our chief guest, you've traveled widely and you go to supermarkets in the US and the Europes, and what you realize is that when you go into that supermarket, you have a section of food that is written bio, and very expensive food. Some of these insects that are being taken out of our, when those nations are producing their food, they use them in their greenhouses. They don't use chemicals. They use them to control aphids and any other microorganism that will destroy their crops. So that is how important our natural resources are, and I'm happy to join all of you here. Our chief guest, it is an honor to join you today and the distinguished guest here for the launch of the Public Benefit Organization, PBO, draft regulations, a key milestone in the operationalization of the PBO Act 2013, and I've been wondering why it has taken us more than 13 years, or is it 10 years, to actually have the regulations after the Act was done. But in the Kenyan style, we are finally getting there. Chief guest, it is befitting that we mark this occasion on the World Environment Day, which is today, as we reflect not only on the environmental stewardship, but also on the framework that governs how we work together to protect Kenya's natural resources. And with that, I would ask any of you working in the environment and natural resources sector, can we see your hands up? Yes. You can see, chief guest, we have about a quarter of these participants, and I am happy to see them. Now, looking at partnerships and their place in conservation, I would want to say that, ladies and gentlemen, Kenya Wildlife Service recognizes that wildlife conservation, and indeed many other sectors, cannot be achieved by the government alone. We depend on structured, accountable, and transparent partnerships with local communities, civil societies, and international organizations. And for that reason, if you scan across the country, we have over 64 national parks, reserves, and sanctuaries, which occupy 80% of this country. That's huge landmass that is government land. In addition, we have over 240 community and private conservancies that cover approximately 12% of this country. So basically our sector, we are commanding directly 20% of this country on the ground. If you partition Kenya into percentages, 20% this government has reserved for wildlife or biodiversity conservation. In addition to that, ladies and gentlemen, we have more than 200 NGOs and PBOs that are players in that sector. And these are increasingly playing important roles in biodiversity conservation, sustainable land use, and community upliftings. Many of these entities will now fall under the ambit of the PBO Act. As such, these regulations are not just administrative. They are instrumental to aligning national conservation priorities with the vast potential of non-state actors that are in our midst. In terms of accountability and transparency, at KWS, we feel and we say that these are paramount. Our shared success in conservation hinges on trust and accountability. Many NGOs and PBOs operate with funding from taxpayers, foundations, and philanthropists. It is only right that every shilling, every dollar be used transparently, efficiently, and in the service to the public good. That is one of the key foundations that we are instilling at the Kenya Wildlife Service. Ladies and gentlemen, it is increasingly unacceptable that vast sums of money are consumed by overends or lifestyles with little benefit reaching the communities or the core purpose for which these funds are being mobilized by our partners. We must hold ourselves and our partners to higher standards. These draft regulations that will be subjected to public participations offers an opportunity to embed transparency and oversight into the core of every conservation effort and service to humanity that you are always doing in your daily works. Our chief guest, in line with these principles, and as these draft regulations go to public participation, the PBO regulations should, and I have read them from when they were starting to be developed. I think as they go to public participation, they should establish a formal complaint mechanism and offer whistleblower protection. This will empower individuals, including staff and beneficiaries, to report concerns without fear of reprisal. This will be a significant step forward in ensuring that unethical conduct can be addressed promptly and safeguarding the integrity of our sectoral partnerships. Ladies and gentlemen, I looked at the legal synergies and I thought it's going to align the PBO Act with the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act. And the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act has a very clear mandate on stakeholder participation, sustainable use, and protection of ecosystems. The PBO Act provides the legal framework for non-profit actors to operate in the public interest, including in the environment and wildlife conservation sector. Therefore, the two laws are complementary. The Wildlife Conservation and Management Act encourages the formation of conservancies, the formation of wildlife associations that empower local communities. The PBO Act, through these new regulations, should provide oversight and a structured operational framework for non-state actors. Together, these two acts lay the groundwork for enhanced interagency coordination, policy coherence, and community empowerment. The PBO regulations should therefore serve as an enabler, not a barrier, to deepening collaboration and achieving more together than alone. Additionally, the regulations should require that PBOs identify their beneficiaries and involve them in the planning and implementation of the activities. Chief Guest, this will ensure that participants in shaping the programs that affect them. This principle of participatory design is crucial in securing long-term ownership and achieving sustainable impacts across the country. The imports of wildlife in this country, and I will keep on repeating, is that if you look at the number of visitors who come from out, 80% of all the visitors or tourists that come to this country, they come for wildlife viewing. Therefore, our small subsector is contributing approximately 10% to our national GDP. Therefore, wildlife is not just a natural asset, it is an economic pillar, a source of employment, and a foundation for rural livelihoods. That we are using here, the electricity that you're seeing here, how many of you can guess the source? Pashila, over 75% of our power, which is hydro, is generated from the Seven Forks Dam. Where does that river emanate from? From the catchments of Aberdares and Mount Kenya. If Kenya Wildlife Service, Kenya Forest Service, and other agencies were not protecting those areas, including the PBOs that are presented here, that have been pumping money here, will not have those catchment areas getting water to run our hydropowers. If you look at Elsgate, we are getting our geothermal. It's under the protection of Kenya Wildlife Service. If it is let off, then the other 30% will not come here. So that is how important our sectors are. And I would want to conclude and say that it is in the interest of all parties to ensure that NGOs and PBOs supporting conservation are fully aligned with this national interest. And PBOs must be proud to support government programs, not to operate parallel to them. Together, we can enhance Kenya's global standing in conservation and ensure conservation delivers economic benefits and dividends to communities and the nation at large. And as we launch this, or we undertake the public participation, let this launch signal a renewed commitment to resource-based conservation and other actions in the sectors, and one that upholds the public benefits at its core. As these regulations move forward to finalization, we urge all partners to engage, contribute constructively, and align with national frameworks. The future of Kenya depends on what we do together, not what we do separately. Asanteni sana.
Our chief guests, allow me to thank you again from the authorities' side for your steadfast guidance and support and direction as we steer the authority. We want to thank you very much again for the extension that was granted to us by our CS for the BBOs to transit in the next 1 year. That particular extension has gone a long way to calm down the anxiety and the tension that was creeping the sector. These people called me every in the month of April. They were telling me, now what happens? What happens? And I told them it is well, because I knew you were behind me, and we want to thank you very much for that. And so at the authority, we are committed to inclusion and participation, and we are ready to take this law to the and to reflect the diverse perspectives that shape our nation. It's the government, the people, and most importantly, the most vulnerable among us of the board to make it the chairman, Public Benefit Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother, DG, Dr. Kipto. Our chief guest of the day, Dr. Raymond Omolo, who is the PS of Interior and National Administration. Our guests who are here with us today, the Director General of KWS, the Registrar and Secretary of the Tribunals, and Asuka, if I'm not wrong. My sister, I was just joking to her whether she will change the name to PPO or it will remain Health NGOs. Dr. Margaret Lubale, my good friend Irungu from Amnesty International, is the Executive Director of Amnesty International. All invited guests. I don't know whether it's morning or afternoon. Are we in the afternoon? Good afternoon. I thought this could be the day everybody should be extremely happy, but you seem not to be very happy. My expectations. Good afternoon. Thank you. Yeah, maybe before I make a few remarks, Chief Guest, let me introduce the directors of the board who are with us here. Some of the directors that are present today. Regina, she's the director of the board, where I sit as the chair. Kanini, she is the representative of the AG, Wakili Kanini. Cheboy, you've heard from your friends about the federation. He sits on the board on behalf of the federation. And Beatrice, those are the directors who are with us today. Chief Guest, I will not read my speech, but I want to make a few comments, just a few remarks, and because these days with these people, I've visited them, we've talked, and we have very good have today. This is a great myself every time I interact with some of you, not you, but some of you, whether the government and if we serve the same client, and the exercise we are going just to get into will be very interesting. And as the statement people use that people agree or disagree to agree may not be universally correct, but at times it's the best for the technicalities that you may find therein. When we came in the office, especially, I came ahead of my Director General, and we realized that, yes, there are two versions of the drafts from the civil society and the government. And it has not been very easy. And the government, through His Excellency the President, when he was campaigning, he made a commitment to the civil society that he is going to operationalize this act. And indeed, he pronounced himself in the public, and 1 year, that's last year, in May, he confirmed what he promised to the civil society. To me, that was a big, bold step that he took, because you need to ask yourself why the act has been lying in the shelves for the last maybe 13 or over a decade. You need to ask yourself those kind of questions. And I gave you my commitment with the board on behalf of the board that we will be there for you to ensure that we have regulations that facilitates your operations and not regulations that frustrates you. And we have my peers, or peers who is here today, I can confirm to you. Yes, at times when you talk of interior, people look at it differently. But he's one of the most diplomatic person we have in government, and he has that position. We've had several engagements. We are not here just because of our own struggle. If it were not for the goodwill of the government, believe me, we could not be here. And as I said from day one when I interacted with you, that this is your baby. You can choose to strangle the baby or make the baby grow. One time, St. Thomas Aquino said this, and these are my last remarks, and take it. He said that distinctions drawn by the minds are not necessarily or equal to the distinctions in reality. Yes, we are going outside there. we want to come up with a progressive document for posterity. I would appeal to all of you. Which reality are we looking at? Which realities in the sector? If we all converge on that table of the remaining 10%, believe me this act, for those who have taken time to read and understand, for those who have consulted even the legal brains that we have around, we shall be a benchmark in the continent. Yes, we've been in the lead, but we can do much better. When does reality begin? Every mind can create its own reality. But which reality, when you go in the field outside there, which reality are you looking at? There's one time somebody said this, that when professor to a banana becomes a banana, is it when it's ripe? Is it when it's green? Is it when it's black? Where is the reality? Or a stem of a banana, will it also be called a banana? If you are shown a stem of a banana, will you call it a banana? So as you go out, you must look for things that can bring us together and ensure that as we come back for validation of this document, we are all proud. To the civil society who are here, please take the lead. The government is willing, and at times, don't take it for granted when the government, there is political goodwill space, the leaders are willing to move with you. Tomorrow you may have a leader who has no business to do with these kind of things that we're doing. And these are the things you can see even in our neighborhood. It's not far from us. I know you've walked a journey, but at times we can lose the track if we get into side shows, attributes of our mind, personal things that can derail the process. So I appeal to all of you that we go outside there, bring the input that you have in the document so that we have a document that can be embraced by everybody. Today is not my day, Chief Guest. I want to take this opportunity and request all of you to stand up so that we invite the Chief Guest, Dr. Raymond Omolo, to give his remarks and officially launch this harmonized draft.
Thank you. Let's all be seated. So to the chair of the Mwabu Mabonga and the members of the board who serve with you, the DG of PIBORA, Dr. Kipto, Director General of KWS, Professor Kanga. We have the Registrar and Secretary of Tribunals, Ms. Ann, Project Manager, UNDM Kenya, Mr. Jaffa, several representatives of various PBOs. I have a long list of PBOs who are in the room, and I'm also aware that there are those of us who are following online, our development partners, UNDP, GIZ, colleagues from across government, ministries, agencies, and all of us who have a lot of interest in what is happening in the PBO sector. Good afternoon. Good afternoon once again. As I was listening in, first when I walked in, I looked at the numbers, and for once I was like, is there something that I don't know, or this is how the CSOs are organized? And I must admit that I'm impressed by the amount of interest and also the diversity of the representation as we begin this journey to look at the draft regulations that is going to guide the sector. My sister from Maendeleo ya Wanawake, I have many friends around, both in the hall as well as up on the podium. 91, I'm sure there are some of you are wondering where you are. Of course, we must give it up to people like Kirungu and colleagues. Let's give them a round of applause. for the interest that they've had over the years and remaining and staying the course in pursuit of what is in the interest of all of us, the humanitarian space. Now, I know we represent many, many sectors, and I would want to associate with my sister who is representing those who are in the health sector. And for a long time, that is the space that I belonged to until I joined government. So I can fully relate. We did a lot of work in the health sector trying to get treatments and medication, working with some of the most vulnerable communities, particularly in the North Rift, and not just in the country, but across the region. And therefore, when we talk about public benefits organization, I can relate, not just as the PS in charge of internal security and national administration, but as a Kenyan and also as a professional who has contributed in my small way in alleviating the challenges that our people face over time. I know there are a number of us who are also in the governance space, those who are working in education, those who are working on matters to do with gender inclusivity. And even as we are here, we have been faced with a lot of challenges within that space. We have a task force that is looking at issues to do with gender-based violence and femicide. And as a government, we depend on all of you to help us make this country better. Matters to do with environment and conservation, the DG has spoken to it, and there are a number of you who are in that space. And this particular administration has a lot of interest on matters environment, and the president has been at the forefront trying to spearhead issues to do with conservation and also how best to manage our environment. And maybe just before I speak to what I had planned to speak to is that there may be 2 or 3 other issues that I wanted to bring us up to speed with. One is with the Financial Action Task Force that is looking at issues around the space of financing, particularly for terrorism or terrorist activities. And as a country, we were recently grey-listed, and we are trying to work with all the players within that space so that then we can get out of that of the grey list. And one of the things that is outstanding, which directly affects this sector, is a risk-based assessment of PBOs on terrorism financing. And as we work on finalizing the regulations, I hope we would pay keen attention to support the authority in realizing this and also sustaining it so that then we do not create avenue or a safe haven for elements who would otherwise want to taint the good image of what you're already doing within the sector. Then there are issues around financing, and one of the speakers has spoken to it. For a long time, we have relied and depended on external partners and donors to finance our operations within this sector. We definitely still expect that that will continue, but the reality is that there is competition for resources and that space continues to shrink. How, as we look at these regulations and as we look at the implementation of this act, how do we create an environment that then allow us to have sustainability in the financing and funding of our operations in each of those subsectors that are of interest to us. Then, of course, there are issues on governance. I know there is an issue with the federation. We've had to go to court. Some of you have taken us to court. How do we address those gaps around governance? And as we look at these regulations, what are some of the things that, or some of the areas that we need to focus on so that then there is better and proper governance as well as accountability? So that as we demand, or as you demand of us as a government to be accountable, to be transparent, I think it's proper that we also ask who are in the sector. And therefore, I feel proud today that we are celebrating an important milestone in the journey that began way back in 2013, that's 12 years ago, when the PBO Act was enacted. Even more gratifying to me is the fact that the operationalization of this more than a decade later has in a way redefined our, and I know many of us might want not to admit it, but it's about leadership. His Excellency the President, when he was campaigning to be President, made a commitment that he will ensure that the Act is operationalized. He came to office, and there was a lot of resistance, not just from outside government, but even from within government. And a number of people were asking, there must have been a very good reason why in 2013 this Act was not operationalized, why in the last administration was not operationalized. So why don't we kick the can down the road? But he was very adamant and resolute. He said, one, I gave my commitment, but number two, it is the right thing to do. So he literally walked the talk. And that is why we are here today. Operationalizing the Act, along the way, we realized that the time wasn't adequate. Again, we sat back as we were getting a lot of concerns that probably the President did not mean everything he said, or probably some of us that he gave the responsibility to take responsibility for what is happening in this sector were dragging our feet. But as the Chair and the CEO has said, we have another extension that takes us to May. And this we did out of abundance of caution. Actually, I was a bit hard on them. I was telling them, we don't need another 1 year to complete this process. 3 months should be adequate. And therefore, because we are here, I would want to encourage us that let's fast track this process. We don't have to wait until May next year to close on this. If we can get this done in a month or two, maximum, if we can all purpose to do this within the next 90 days, I'll be one of the happiest PSS around for having ensured that this is delivered. And our friend has made a reference to some of the challenges that we were having. Of course, when His Excellency addressed the conference, I don't know how you call it. This is, it's called what? The UN Civil Society Conference Summit of the Future. That is when he actually, as he was preparing for it, that is when he made that commitment a reality. And therefore, when you look at the Act, it's arguably the most consequential and progressive law on the CSO space in our history. And when you think about even how the Act came into being, it was from yourselves, which again makes it very consequential. The truth is, the PBO Act is a lot better than the NGO Coordination Act of 1990 in many respects. First, it aligns well with Article 36 of the Constitution on the right and freedom of association, including non-restrictive registration. Two, it strengthens asset management and protection mechanism for the PBOs across the country. Three, it provides a clear, fair regulatory and administrative framework that streamlines registration of PBOs as well as enhances transparency and accountability. Number 4, the law provides a robust dispute resolution mechanism through the establishment of the newly formed dispute tribunal by the judiciary. And I must applaud the role that our judiciary has continued to play and in helping us with the setup of this tribunal. And they have already given us a highlight of some of the issues and where they are with this process. In addition, the PBO Act increases public involvement in PBO activities by improving access to information. It empowers citizens, especially the beneficiaries, to hold organizations accountable. I spoke about all of us being accountable. The same way we are holding our government to account, we must also, or equally, hold all of you to account. And this enhances trust and strengthens the social contract between PBOs and the communities that they serve. The PBO Act raises the bar on values governing PBO management, placing integrity, transparency, and collaboration at its core. And most importantly, this law promotes partnership with government as well as the private sector in advancing our national development agenda. Overall, this law represents a significant improvement in our legal and regulatory framework that governs the PBOs. It promises a brighter future for our nation by providing an environment that promotes a more organized, transparent, and impactful PBO sector. Having appreciated that this law is progressive, I would wish to point out that we may have, as a nation, missed out on opportunities that could have come with the implementation of this legislation had we done so back then, in 2013. And what is the opportunity cost to the nation caused by failing to implement the PBO Act for this long? How much have we lost because the regulatory framework was not facilitative enough? In other words, how much more could we have gained as a country had we implemented this law more than a decade ago? Perhaps one may ask themselves, could we have had more PBOs registered in the country had we implemented this law then? What about the ripple effect of the increased employment opportunities that come with more registration? And therefore, I want to challenge all of us to conduct research in this area so that we know and appreciate the cost of our decisions. The government does recognize that PBOs play a great role in complementing our national development efforts, and we also appreciate that PBOs serve the poor, the vulnerable, and those who are at the bottom of our society's pyramid. Perhaps no sector exemplifies the bottom-up economic transformation agenda than the PBO sector. When you look at the sector report, for example, it indicates that the PBOs received 196 billion for projects and employed more than 80,000 people. And this is why the administration of President Ruto is keen on ensuring that the sector operates within a conducive legal and regulatory framework. The CSOs in Kenya advocated tirelessly for the operationalization of the Act. Now that it's here and active, the question becomes, what next? We're now turning our attention to the draft regulations, which we are calling the harmonized draft PBO regulations. This will determine how the law works in practice, and their development and finalization are critical to delivering on the Act's promise. We all understand the spirit and the letter of the Act. Institutions like the PBO Regulatory Authority now have clear mandates and have begun laying out the roadmap for its implementation. And therefore, today's launch is our chance to shape the operational reality of the Act. It's our opportunity to ensure the regulations reflect real needs, practical insights, and we must carry everyone on board so that we avoid the issues of tukutane kotini, or these officers or this CEO and DG and the board is not listening to us. We want every voice to count. And constitutionally, this engagement, public discourse, public participation is a constitutional imperative. There is no other way to getting these regulations in place. And this is how we are going to build regulations that are not only effective, inclusive. To conclude, let me reaffirm.
If you just come down on this side, we have a great handout that will be taking place. The state my good friends, I know they're live on TV at this point, so please don't stand unless directed. The action will be taking place right there. First, to have the PS with the guests who are within upstage to come up. So we'll get direction. All right, so let me have one DG on either side, Chair, to come on either side as well. Madam Anna Sugar, please stand on either side of the all right, good people, do me a favor here. We can kindly please give them a countdown. And ladies and gentlemen, to the count of 5, let's go, 5 to 1. We shortly going to be looking at the Harmonized Draft Public Benefit Organization Regulation, and this. 2, 1, and there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, please. And appreciation to our chief guest, Dr. William Wall, together with DG Soul, the chairman as well. Thank you so much, Professor Kathy. I'm going to kindly ask that we have the PS, the first picture for the